A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. We will start the day with the first topic of the day. This is about the India-China relations. So most of the editorials were based on the India-China relation and the recent talks that took place between the external affairs ministers of the two countries and the 5-point action plan that they have arrived at. So you can see how 4 plus 3, 7 editorials were just based on the 5-point action agenda that the two countries have set together. So the external affairs ministers of both the countries have met each other in Moscow, and there they have decided that there's going to be this 5-point agenda, which they are going to 5-point action plan, which will be there, and they are going to adhere to this 5-point course of action in order to disengage and reduce the conflict at the LAC. So now we'll have a look at these 5 points which are there in the action plan. So the first thing is that both the sides have recognized the fact that there are differences between the two countries in as far as the interpretation of the line of actual control is, but however they don't want to allow these differences to escalate to disputes. So this is the first thing, that while differences will be there, they have acknowledged this fact, so that shouldn't be translated into disputes. This is the first thing. Second is quick disengagement. Even when there are any minor things that go on at the border, the two sides should come together rapidly and quickly. They must disengage from each other. This is the second thing. Third is already a lot of protocols or a lot of border agreements have already been there. It's there between India and China. So these have been violated in the past for an innumerable number of times, particularly now. So this border protocols will have to be adhered and they should not be violated. This is the third thing, that we need to abide by the border protocols and all the other agreements between the two countries. The next fourth action point is the special representative mechanisms that happen between the National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval, and the Chinese counterpart. So this mechanism should continue and it has to be further strengthened in order to de-escalate the relations at whatever is happening at the border. So the special representative mechanism should go on and it should be further strengthened. And also the confidence building measures across the border are also there, and this again needs to be, we need to come out with a stronger mechanism, and we need to work towards new confidence building measures in order to impart that confidence among the civilians of both the countries and among the two countries at the border especially. So these confidence building measures need to be strengthened. These are the important 5 points that have been agreed upon by the two countries to disengage and de-escalate at the border. But however, there are issues related to these agreements, whatever has been agreed as a 5-point action plan. Even in respect to this, there are differences because the two countries inherently have certain differences. The main thing is when after signing this agreement, that after deciding that we are going to have this 5-point agreement, the two countries gave their own commentaries. So in which India says that the two countries have agreed to restore the status quo ante, which means the positions that were there before China started those activities at the LAC and the Galvan Valley in April. So whatever was a position before that, so that will be restored is what India says. So India says that this agreement was to, there has been an understanding related to de-escalation to the status quo ante. We are going to restore the status quo ante. But China in its commentary has made no such commitment that it is going to restore the status quo ante. It has made no such commitment. So this is first thing. And what India says is the border relations are interlinked with the other aspects of relations between India and China, be it economy or any other thing. But what China says is China has always thought that the border issues between the two countries need to be kept separate from the other aspects of India-China relationship. So what China means is that while we are fighting at the borders, it must be possible for us to decouple that and continue to have stronger economic relations and trade across the border. So this is what China believes, and it also asks for. But on the other hand, India says that it's only when we have that confidence, and we have resolved this border issue, only then the rest of the aspects of the relation between the two countries can also be normal. So on these aspects, there are differences between the two countries, and of course the LAC is still undemarcated. So all of these issues may pose hurdle in the implementation of the 5-point action plan that the two countries have agreed upon now. But however, this is a good starting point, because since April this issue has been there, and so much of escalation by China, and now this 5-point action plan is a good starting point for the two countries to come together and resolve this border issue. At least if we are not aiming for that peace and tranquility across the border, at least we must aim for conflict prevention across the border, and this is a first step regarding that, and we will have to watch out for what happens next. So this was related to the latest development in the India-China relation related to the 5-point action plan. Now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to the Jammu and Kashmir issue. So because of the last year August notification of the government of making the Jammu and Kashmir as two union territories of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, and also the recent issues that are happening in Jammu and Kashmir, this is an important question that can be asked in GS2. And so in this you may have a question like what are all the steps that the government has taken towards development in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So in that you can quote this iGRAMS as an example. iGRAMS is nothing but a dispute resolution or a grievance resolution mechanism that has now been introduced in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So it means integrated grievance redressal and monitoring system. So this has now been introduced in Jammu and Kashmir. So under this, this initiative is going to promote transparency. Why? Because any citizen, whoever has any grievance against any state authority, can file a grievance on this portal, and then he or she can also see transparently the status of that grievance, where has that grievance progressed, has that grievance been forwarded to the concerned ministry or the department, where is it being now taken up. So that transparency is there. Second is, it is also going to ensure more accountability on part of the state, because if any public authority or official has not taken up the grievance of any citizen timely, and if there is any delay in considering the grievance, if there is any callousness in considering the grievance, then action will be taken against the corresponding public authority or the official. So therefore this is also going to ensure that accountability on part of the state. Third is that this is very important when we are talking about good governance, because a prompt and citizen-centric grievance redressal system is an integral part of the good governance. So when iGRAMS is now being introduced, therefore it is in fact a measure in the right direction towards establishing good governance in Jammu and Kashmir. So these are the things that iGRAMS is going to promote in the state, and whatever issues the citizens are having, that will be resolved promptly, and their grievances are going to be redressed timely. So this is the whole motive of this initiative. So whenever you are mentioning about the steps that the government has taken for the betterment or for the development of Jammu and Kashmir, you can make a mention of iGRAMS. And iGRAMS, that is grievance redressal, is a pillar of good governance. So you can also write the related keywords of good governance like transparency, accountability, and winning of the public trust is very important in today's Jammu and Kashmir. So this is precisely what iGRAMS is going to attempting to achieve. So you can use this as an example. Now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to housing issue. This can also come up in ethics in your GS4 paper also. And because housing and population related issues are a part of your GS1 syllabus, and affordable housing and the government policies related to it can be a part of your GS2 syllabus, so it can come across any of these three papers. So now this topic is related to the recent Supreme Court judgment, which was titled the MC Mehta versus the Union of India. So in this judgment, which was delivered by the Supreme Court recently, the Supreme Court has held that nearly 48,000 slum dwellings that have come up along the railway tracks in Delhi, they will have to be removed within a period of 3 months. So this editorial is saying that this judgment has violated a lot of principles. First is it has violated the principle of natural justice. Why? Because those people who are being affected, in this case the slum dwellers who are dwelling along this railway tracks in Delhi, they were never heard and they were not involved in the process at all. So natural justice principle says that the other side also needs to be given a fair hearing. In this case, the slum dwellers across the railway tracks who were dwelling there, they have not been given a fair hearing. Thereby, this judgment of the Supreme Court has violated the principle of natural justice. So second, it has also violated the due process, because giving a fair hearing, so these people were not given a fair hearing and therefore the due process was also not followed. And the third thing is the issue of the right to shelter. In fact, this is the dwelling of these slum dwellers, and where will they go if this is being removed in the next 3 months? So Supreme Court has in the earlier various judgments also recognized the right to shelter also as part of Article 21 under the right to life. So this again is now being violated by the Supreme Court judgment. So this is the recent judgment and these are the principles that this is going to violate. And after this editorial used a series of judgments that has been given by the Supreme Court and also by the state high courts, particularly the Delhi High Court, regarding the right to livelihood and the right to shelter. So all of these judgments become very important whenever you have to quote it in the exam along with the name and what each of these judgments said. And I have also told you repeatedly that whenever you come across any judgment, you have to make a table of all the judgments and what they talk about, and then you have to practice it, you have to revise it again and again, so that in your answers you are able to use these judgments along with the name. So the name of the judgment carries a lot of weightage, so you have to give sufficient time and focus to memorize these names, what these judgment is and what are they related to. So now we'll go through the important judgments that were discussed in this particular editorial. So first was the Olga Tellis versus the Bombay Municipal Corporation judgment that was given in 1985. So what this judgment told was that the right to livelihood is a part of the right to life. So that is, right to livelihood comes under Article 21, which talks about the right to life and liberty. So this is what the Supreme Court said, that the right to life also includes the right to livelihood. And whenever people will have to be evicted from a particular place, then eviction cannot happen without giving those people notice that they are going to be evicted, and also a hearing that what is their side of the story. So a notice needs to be given to the people who are being evicted, that this many months will be given to you, so you may move accordingly. So notice needs to be given, and also they need to be given a fair hearing. So this was told in the Olga Tellis case by the Supreme Court, that it's important to give them notice and also a fair hearing whenever people are going to be affected, and also the right to livelihood is a part of right to life. So these three were the important things that were told in the Olga Tellis case. Next was the Chameli Singh versus the state of Uttar Pradesh case that happened in 1995. So here the Supreme Court held that the right to shelter comes under the right to life and liberty, that is right under Article 21. So it expanded the meaning of or the interpretation of Article 21 to include that the right to life will also include a right to shelter. So this was one important thing that was mentioned in the Chameli Singh versus the state of Uttar Pradesh, that the right to shelter comes under Article 21. So by forced eviction, we are going to violate Article 21, which is a fundamental right of the Constitution. Judgment was the Sudama Singh versus the versus the government of Delhi in 2010. So in this judgment, it was the High Court of Delhi. So the Delhi High Court held that whenever eviction needs to happen, first a survey of that place needs to be done. Once a survey is done, then we'll have to make relocation plans. So how these people who are now put up there, who are now having their residence or their slum dwellings there, how are they going to be relocated? So these relocation plan needs to be made. And also whoever are going to be evicted, those people must be meaningfully engaged in preparation of this relocation plan. So this was the third thing that the Delhi High Court told. First is that the survey of the area which is going to be evicted. Second is relocation plans should be made for relocating the people who are residing in this area. And third is that those people who are going to be evicted, they must also be meaningfully engaged in preparing the relocation plans. So these three were the important points under the Sudama Singh versus the government of Delhi. So this again is important, and the same things were also reiterated by another judgment that was called as Ajay Maken judgment that was delivered in 2019. So here also the same things were reiterated by the court in the Ajay Maken case as also. So these were the important case that you can use based on the answers. So supposing you are writing a case study also, you can say that there is already a judgment which says that you need to meaningfully engage these people and then prepare a relocation plan, and you can't just outrightly evict them from their place of residence. So all of these things you can use, and even in your GS2 you may have different questions that come up on the policy of what is the stated policy of eviction of the state. So in such cases you can use these court cases. Now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to the issue of malnutrition. So issue of malnutrition comes under the broader topic of health, which comes under your GS syllabus too. So this is in news because recently the government has announced that September is going to be treated as the Poshan Mah 2020. So that is the entire month of September is going to be focused on it is going to be declared as a month of Poshan, that is to focus on the nutrition and to eradicate malnutrition. Why it is important for India? Because Sustainable Development Goal 2 says that we need to have zero hunger by 2030, and under the zero hunger we have a sub target which is to end all forms of malnutrition by 2030. So because of SDG 2 also, this Poshan month and the Poshan Abhiyan as such and eradicating malnutrition in India is very, very important. So now let's look at important data which tells us the severity of the problem. Because you may have a question saying what is malnutrition, define malnutrition, what is the severity of the problem of malnutrition in India, and suggest steps to overcome the same. So you must have some good data to support this, to argue that the problem is actually very severe in India. So this data is by the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report. So this report we have already discussed before in one of the ICANN videos. So in this State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report, this report says that nearly 673 million people across the world are undernourished. So out of this, 28% are in India. So 673 million people across the world are undernourished, of which 28% are in India itself. This is in the 2017 to 2019 period. So this data is by the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report. So this is one thing. And second thing is, the data also says that India has 28% of the world's stunted children and also 43% of the world's wasted children. Stunted children means those who have low height for their age, and wasted children means those who have low weight for their height. So India has 28% of the world's stunted children and 43% of the world's wasted children. So all of this data shows that the problem of malnutrition in India is very severe and it needs to be tackled at as a war front. So now in this regard, let's see what the Poshan Abhiyan targets are. This is also important from your prelims point of view, because you may have a question on this and some 2-3 statements based on that. So you must clearly know what the specific targets are. So the Poshan Abhiyan, first of all, is also called as a National Nutrition Mission. So the two are not different. You must not get confused on this. Second is the Poshan Abhiyan aims to reduce the stunting among children, underweight and also low birth weight. So all the three needs to be reduced by 2% per annum. So by 2022, this is the target under Poshan Abhiyan. Stunting among children below 8, underweight among children below 5, stunting of children who are below 5, and everything is below 5, underweight children and low birth weight. All of this needs to be reduced by 2% per annum by 2022. Next, it focuses on anemia. Anemia, be it among children or be it among adolescent girls or be it among women, the anemia needs to be reduced by 3% per annum by 2022. So this is the target under the Poshan Abhiyan or the National Nutrition Mission. But however, let's have a look at the performance. So Global Burden of Disease Study, which studied the trend over 1990 to 2017. So this report says that if the current trend continues, then India will not be able to achieve these targets under the Poshan Abhiyan. So this is what it says. This is said by the Global Burden of Disease Study. So it says that if the current trend continues, then India is not going to achieve its targets under Poshan Abhiyan. So now we know how severe the problem of malnutrition is and what is the target under the Poshan Abhiyan. But how far has Poshan Abhiyan performed till now, which has not been very satisfactory. In such a case, what is it that we have to do in the future that we can achieve this goal of eradicating malnutrition? So the first important thing in that is related to the National Family Health Survey 2015-16 findings. So this survey finds that there is a direct correlation between the woman's education and the child's nutrition status. So when the woman is educated, she knows when to feed the child, she knows the important breastfeeding practices, she knows what nutrition is best for the child. So therefore an educated woman is going to help build a very nutritious child which is not malnourished. So there is a direct correlation between the two. So what the NFHS finding says that it is because of this direct correlation we need to improve the educational attainment of women so that they know exactly how what needs to be fed to their children. They know the child's feeding practice and they know the importance of sanitation and hygiene. So they know the importance of vaccination, they know the importance of breastfeeding. So all of that is because of the education of women, and therefore it's very important to promote education among women. So this is what the NFHS finding says, and this is the first thing that we need to emphasize upon going forward. So the consequent question is, how then do we encourage education among women? One is you can provide them liberal scholarships. Second is the so many commonly observed things. For instance, the high rate of dropouts among the girl children is also because of the absence of good toilet facilities at school. So have the separate toilets and good sanitation facilities for girls at schools so that they don't drop out. So that is one thing. And second is there is definitely a distance between the homes to the school which needs to be covered, and for that several state governments have come out with the option of giving cycles to the girls so that they can commute, and because of that one reason they are not deprived of education. So explore such initiatives by giving bicycles to girls which they can take it to the schools, and providing separate toilets and providing liberal scholarships. These are the various ways by which we can encourage education among girl child. So the next important thing we need to emphasize upon is WASH. So WASH is nothing but safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene. So that is WASH. We need to focus on this because here again there is a direct correlation between our sanitation facilities and also the nutrition. When the sanitation is poor, then our intestine gets infected with a lot of bacteria and worms, and it will lose the capacity to absorb the nutrients from the food we eat. So therefore, even if the child is eating the food, its intestines will lose the capacity to absorb the nutrients from the food eaten, and thereby it leads to malnutrition among children. So therefore, it's very important to provide good sanitation facilities or drinking water, and that promoting that hygiene is very important if you are looking for improving the nutritional outcomes among children. So this is one thing. And as far as this is concerned, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is playing a very important role. In fact, of rural sanitation, the rural sanitation coverage before the starting of Swachh Bharat initiative in 2014, it was just nearly 39%. Now the rural sanitation coverage is 100% in 2019. And if we talk of sanitation coverage in the urban areas, it was because of this Swachh Bharat initiative, it has become 99% as on September 2020. So this is the data related to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and this is very commendable that this initiative of the government is promoting WASH, and this can help us in having better nutritional outcome of children. So this is the second thing that needs to be emphasized. The third important thing is the diet diversification. So this again is as a name itself suggests, Indian diet is mostly based on rice and wheat. So we need to diversify our food basket, which can include coarse cereals, which can include millets, which can include protein rich pulses. And also biofortification is one thing that this article talks about, that we need to biofortify our food to get that supplementary nutrition to children. So in this case, the ICAR, Indian Council for Agriculture Research, can come out with new varieties of biofortified food, be it zinc biofortified rice and wheat, or it is iron fortified beans in India. So these are the some of the things that ICAR can come out. So ICAR can come out with new varieties of biofortified food. This will help us to have that extra supplementary nutrition, which is very important given our food basket is based on just rice and wheat. And lastly, we need to focus is on breastfeeding practices, which again doesn't happen very consistently, and as it should happen, it doesn't happen. So promotion of exclusive breastfeeding habits need to be introduced in India. So mothers need to be educated on the same. So these are some of the things which we can do if we have to improve our nutritional outcomes, and if we have to achieve the targets by 2022 that has been laid down under the National Nutrition Mission or the Poshan Abhiyan. So now we'll move on to the next topic. This is related to the functioning of the parliament, and it's just a very small piece of information which can serve as an additional example when you're writing an answer. So if you have a question like examine the functioning of the parliament, so you will be writing several positive and negative things. Among the negative things, you will also be listing things like the efficacy of the question hours, which has diluted the accountability of the executive to the legislator, all of that. So in such answers, the more the number of examples you give, the more effective the answer comes out. So one example that we recently discussed was how the question hour has been done away with and the 0 hour has been curtailed in the recent monsoon session of the parliament is one example that you can give. The second example that you can give is the office of deputy speaker has been lying vacant even now. So the 17th Lok Sabha was formed last year, and even for more than 1 year has lapsed now. In spite of that, the office of Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha is lying vacant, and whether based on consensus or on through nomination, so it has not happened. The selection of the office of Deputy Speaker has not happened even till date, and the office is lying vacant. So this delay has been caused by the government, and it also shows the lack of seriousness on part of the government to provide an incumbent to such an important constitutional office. So this again talks about the functioning of the parliament, which you can quote as an example. So nothing more in this article. Now we'll move on to the next topic. This is the last topic for the day, and this talks about healthcare issue again, which is mainly about cancer. So again, healthcare issue or anything that is particular under the healthcare topic, which is communicable or non-communicable, etc., comes under your GS paper 2. So this whole article talks about cancer and what should be our approach in India towards increasing incidence of cancer in the country and how we must deal with it. So first, the article opens by quoting the data of National Cancer Registry. The National Cancer Registry report of August 2020 has estimated that the cancer cases in India is in 2020 is 13.9 lakh, and it is still September. The number of cancer cases in India in 2020 is 13.9 lakh. And also the second thing that it observes is India's cancer burden in the time period from 1990 to 2016 has increased nearly 2.6 times. So the cancer burden in this period has increased by 2.6 times, and also the deaths related to cancer has now almost doubled. So these are the three important observations or the data that comes from the National Cancer Registry. It says that India has 13.9 lakh cancer suffering patients. And in the time period from 1990 to 2016, the cancer burden, the disease burden has increased by 2.6 times, and the deaths related to cancer have also doubled. So in this cases, in such a case, let's identify some of the important risk factors that can cause. So the causes or the risk factors. The most important cause is said to be the use of tobacco. In fact, it is said that tobacco is such a huge risk factor that if this one thing is avoided, then at least 27% of the cancer cases are going to reduce if we just can tackle with this one risk factor of tobacco. So that is the most important risk factor. There are also other risk factors which includes the use of alcohol, and the third important risk factor is an inappropriate diet. Next is your low physical activity, that is having a very sedentary lifestyle where you don't move around at all, just like we do during UPSC preparation. So then is obesity, and then is pollution. So these are the important risk factors for cancer, and if we aim to achieve a reduction in the cancer incidence in India and the related deaths, then we first will have to aim towards reducing these risk factors. It is because of these risk factors that the incidence of cancer is happening. So rather than focusing much on the treatment of cancer, we first need to focus on these risk factors and tackle them one by one. So in fact, the entire article just focuses on the thing that what our focus in India lies on this part, that is only the treatment. But what we also need to do is to identify the risk factors and aim towards risk reduction. Next is when the risk reduction fails, and if somebody already gets cancer, then there has to be early detection, because most of the cancers get detected at a later stages where hardly anything can be done. So early detection is very important, and last is the treatment. When you talk of treatment, again we also need to invest in better research where the cancer treatment can happen more easily, more inexpensively, and also without causing damage to various peripheral tissues. Then it also involves palliative care, where those cancer patients who are going to die are made to die in a dignified manner without facing too much of pain and suffering. So that is palliative care. So treatment needs to tackle both these things again. So the article also says that when we are talking about risk reduction, it's very important that we go at it in a very collaborative setting with the government, with the civil society, and the private practitioners all collaborating together. For instance, one of the risk factors is the abuse of alcohol rather. So again, in that, everybody will have to come together, and only then one can tackle this risk factor. Same is the case with obesity. So this risk reduction requires a coordinated approach on the part of the government, the civil society, and the private practitioners. So this is very important. And then it talks about again early detection. Earlier the cancer is detected, the better can be the cure, and more likelihood are the chances for the person to survive. Hence early detection is important, and treatment, as we have already discussed, these two, research and palliative care, also needs to be covered. And this cycle you can draw in your exam, and you can highlight the importance of these stages, not just focus on the treatment. So that should be our approach towards cancer in India. And it's also important because the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, under this, India is committed for achieving at least a 1/3 reduction in the cancer related deaths in the country. So to achieve this SDG goals, we need to now set all these things right, ensure collaboration, and also shift our focus from just treatment towards risk reduction and early treatment. So this was all related to this, and the article also talks about some of the policies related to some of the risk factors and also some of the policies to deal with cancer. So one important policy, of course, is a national health policy, which is like an umbrella policy. And then there is a national tobacco control program. So this, as we saw, that tobacco is one of the most important risk factors, and tackling this risk factor can reduce the cancer related deaths in India by 27%. So the National Tobacco Control Program is there. We also have a national program for prevention and control of cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases and stroke. So this program is also working in India. So we need to emphasize on all these programs and ensure that they are successfully implemented. So we need to shift our approach from just diagnostics and treatment towards risk reduction and also early treatment and early detection. So this is what should be our approach towards cancer. So that's it for today. These were the other articles that weren't really important from the exam point of view, or we have already covered the same issue previously and there was just a repetition of the previously covered issues. So that's it for today. And yeah, one more thing that I wanted to tell is by mistake I read today's Hindu and today's Indian Express and Saturdays. So I had to read Saturdays and Fridays, but I somehow missed it and I read today's and Saturdays. So Fridays will remain. We'll see when we can cover it up. So thank you.